Hi, everyone. I made a couple attempts to share what's on my heart today without a script. And frankly, as anyone who's made a video presentation knows, it's not the same as having a discussion with someone about something in person. There's just something missing when there's an audio recorder between you and your audience, whether it be one person or 100, with all that you want to share, hoping you don't forget any of it or confuse the message by trying to cover everything quickly by memory. It becomes a mixed up, jumbled mess of an otherwise organized thought process. Maybe that's why I always preferred to talk with several of you personally via phone rather than through videos. It's just not the same, at least not in my experience. But the trouble with that back then was countless hours and hours spent trying to communicate a message from intellect that cannot really be communicated, it must be experienced. So, a script it is, at least for now, in an effort to keep my message as brief as possible, while at the same time trying to communicate an experience that is necessary for that information to actually land. And, to borrow only a part of a great line in the movie They Live, I'm here to kick ass and suck honey sticks, and I'm all out of honey sticks. And I'm no longer kissing anybody's ass to gain their attention. So, either disable your program triggers for a time or don't. And I'm not going to rush this. And you can take it or leave it, it makes no difference to me. My responsibility ends once I upload the message. The responsibility in getting the message out ends and then yours begins. What you do with it is up to you. If you haven't noticed, I still have never asked any of you to like, share, or subscribe to my channel. Why? Because I'm not selling anything. You're free to learn something important or don't. In this video, I'll be adding several excerpts from other audio presentations and only one news report video excerpt to support a prediction made nearly 10 years ago. But, for the most part, it will be only audio. So if you don't have time to listen all the way through to the end, it's not going to make a lick of sense. And you may as well just stop right here and skip on over to your favorite sales and marketing guru, the one that's now selling cheap knockoffs of a twisted New Age doctrine in exchange for the old unindoctrination junk. Why? Because mystical, non-experiential, New Age bullshit still sells, and he knows that. So rush right on over and double that deal by acting now. And all you gotta do is pay out the nose, and remember, all sales are final, so don't bother keeping a receipt. Which reminds me, I have questions for all of you who are still submitting yourselves to astrology, numerology, tarot, and any other tools that you feel subject to use in an effort to gain wisdom, guidance, or answers. How is that in any way personal sovereignty? How can you honestly state that you've become personally sovereign, and yet you're still relying on external tools and charts and subjecting yourselves to age-old programmed answers of material objects and or star locations that have been dictated to you from some deeply programmed book by those who would ensnare you? No different than the Bible, which is a book that is totally programmed to keep you from actually becoming sovereign or ever experiencing a connection to what you still call source. Do any of you really believe you need a medium or a tool to connect to what you really are? Is your consciousness that limited? Is your internal wisdom unable to connect with you without some external tool? You might as well get a priest. It's the same fucking thing. Connecting to wisdom takes absolutely nothing but you asking for it and setting your intent on doing so. No frills, no thrills, no rainbow colors, but that's what you've been sold. So you insist on remaining there and gain nothing but a cheap knockoff of the real thing. For those of you who've had enough of these hucksters, feel free to hang in there with me. This won't take that long, and you invest nothing but a little time. Since this is mostly audio, feel free to multitask and get some house cleaning done or exercise or whatever. You'll accomplish something mundane while gaining a return on your time and lose nothing. Now, I know that's not quite as exciting as the possibility of getting ripped off and wasting hours and hours in a live chat that goes nowhere slowly. That's always a thrill. But you may in time find it's quite genuine and actually gain something instead of having to give something all the time. only to realize you've received very little in return for your investment. What a concept. Anyway, enough sarcasm. Today we're going to just plunge right into the deep end. Telling people about any authentic experience with a higher frequency consciousness is not and has never been easy, and that's why metaphors have always been used to explain them, so people could actually take from their own personal experience and gain an understanding. Unfortunately, metaphors only work when someone has had that particular metaphor within their experience. Otherwise, it cannot be grokked on any level other than intellect. So many people are still claiming experiences that are so disingenuous, based on faulty perceptions of what they've been told, that most are simply creating these experiences via their own imaginations and concepts or ideas from very limited perceptions of reality. But hey, if that's all you got to work with, well, then it's better than nothing, right? No. If you notice, these same people are continuously unable to bypass the constant life dramas and cannot gain any real experience outside of what they've been told. The stories are all the same, with very little variance, and always include mystical connotations that force them to put that experience into a neat little box that's been given to them by someone else. Just like NDEs and ayahuasca trips, they're always the same, and always based on the person's beliefs and expectations prior to the experience. They don't bother to question whether the experience was contrived, programmed, or inserted or synchronized for nefarious reasons either. They just assume it must be divine, and it is. Believe me, it is. Nothing like what I experienced, which held no airy-fairy nonsense and was totally pragmatic openness to whatever might present itself. What I experienced was nothing short of miraculous, but not the way most shared their experiences. Anyway, lately I've noticed that I've been experiencing a deep internal frustration, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Those are the most disturbing for me. So I went into an equally deep inquiry. Now, I mistakenly compared my frustration at first to the frustration that Jonathan experienced and how he left the internet and just went out and did the work himself, one-on-one, in person, because just like religion and his bike analogy, people on the internet were riding him and not learning to ride the bike. And every attempt to actually ride the bike was filtered through faulty instructions from those who don't want you to ride that bike.
And so now that they see you riding the bike, you've got their attention. You've got their attention because they've been reading about a bike and how to ride it their whole lives, and they can't understand why they can't ride it and you can. Maybe they think there's something wrong with them or something wrong with you. But with mind control, which is what religion is, people cannot allow themselves to see the direct contradictions. I mean, the Old Testament is absolute crap. It's pure mind control. I mean, come on. It's all sacred geometry. It's crap. What does that have to do, descriptions like that, and family lineage have to do with the spirit? Not one thing. Not one. The problem is, the majority of these used car salesmen is that they're not qualified to teach you about spirit. You've been told that they are, but they're not. Do you understand that they are practicing occult Satanism, whether they know it or not? They're not qualified to teach you about spirit. Why? Because even if their intentions are good, they've learned about God from the Bible. It's all channeled, and probably at an early age, so it created this rigid filter we call a belief system, trying to filter everything they experience through this indoctrinated belief system. These people aren't qualified to teach you about spirit any more than somebody's qualified to teach you how to ride a bike who's only read a book about riding a bike, and a fraudulent one at that, and has never ridden one themselves. They're not qualified. But because the mind control is so stiff and so strong, and there's so much fear of the unknown attached to it, the people that desperately want to ride a bike but have been programmed with this would rather kill somebody who can show them how to ride the bike because of the fear and the mind control. You have all kinds of control methods you couldn't even comprehend. My goal is not to attack anybody. My goal is to fix this whole thing. I don't want to get out and escape it because it will still exist. And believe me, if I'm being shown what's going on, that means something larger isn't happy with this situation either. So it's not going anywhere.
Anyway, then I thought about how the Beals speak of this same frustration and compare it to trying to move a jackass that sits stubbornly in the road refusing to get up. So they too are at that place of walking away and doing the work themselves. And I cannot blame them, or Jonathan, as I have seen how fruitless it is trying to share an experience with those who can only project their lack of experience onto everything and filter everything within the parameters of the faulty instructions they've taken as truth from something they've read or heard or just wanted to believe in order to lazily not have to do the work required to gain actual personal experience. Now, did Jonathan have it all down? No. And he was the first to admit that he was still learning and that no one has the whole truth. Or, as he said, he was in therapy daily, cleaning up his own mental mess, which opened him up to what he called infusions from the creative force of all that is. Do the Beals have it all down? No. They too are reaching out to us to find those who can assist them in filling in the blanks. So where the fuck are all of you supposed sovereign beings? Are any of you ground crew? Would you even know if you were? I'm going to give you a bit of a hint. Ground crew are those who actually take personal sovereignty over their own cognitive advancement, with or without a teacher, and know intuitively sound teachings over hogwash. But more importantly, ground crew are those who have always felt an inner push to expose and eliminate tyranny, whether it's petty tyrants they come into contact with on a daily basis online or in person, or massive tyranny worldwide. It's just in them, and they cannot remain silent or just ignore it at any level. That's how I knew. I knew there was massive tyranny controlling this planet, but I addressed it right here at our level within us. I honestly never knew that I could actually make any difference on a higher scale of tyranny until I took personal sovereignty over my own cognitive awareness and began exiting first cognition thinking and reacting. This is not done by revolution or chaos. That's exactly what they want, so they can create order out of it.
So Satanists are going to promote anarchy. You watch. You don't believe me? You just wait. I guarantee you they'll slip in that word as they're talking about government and how bad it is. Why? Because the people that are putting out this propaganda, the truth movement about 9/11, are the ones that attacked us on 9/11. Why? Don't you know their phrase? Order out of chaos. They want chaos. They don't want you to have a solution. No, no, no. They don't want you to be able to unify. They just want you to rise up like chickens with their heads cut off so that there is chaos or anarchy. Don't think that's possible? Have you ever seen footage of a riot? They want you to rise up. Nobody's solving anything. It's just a bunch of propaganda bullshit about 9/11. People send emails to each other and talk about it all the time, but nobody's doing anything. Exactly. When the right date, day, hour, minute, second, it's going to kick off, and you're going to have anarchy. So that they can bring in foreign troops, most probably China.
The most dangerous thing going on with big tech right now is Google's collusion with our number one enemy, China. China has a clearly stated plan for world domination by 2149, the 100th anniversary of the communist regime. It sees technology as its primary weapon, especially artificial intelligence. China, the world's worst authoritarian dictatorship, and a mortal threat to America, democracy, and freedom.
To, quote, restore order out of chaos and attack the United States. To restore order, of course, and then dissolve the border between Canada and Mexico and bring in your wonderful American Union, loaded with electronic mind control and all of the trimmings. Hopefully that'll clear up for you why Satanists would appear to be on your side, fighting for the freedom of your rights. They're puppets. Remember, in the name of love, in the name of what's right, that's what they're going to do. Therefore, Listening to somebody like me telling you the facts will not help you, because if you can't see that for yourself, then telling you will do nothing. It will do nothing for you other than load up that left hemisphere of your brain and accomplish nothing. I'm telling you, connect to your spirit inside, dismantle the ego and intend for that. And then you will see. I didn't read what I'm telling you anywhere. You've got to resist the anarchy, which will be very difficult, but that's what they don't want, is a calm approach to what's happening. That is their worst nightmare. They need chaos for order. These people have a history of pointing their fingers at themselves. They did it when they switched from dictatorship to hidden hand. They're doing it now. They're exposing what's happened on 9/11 through these fake underground truth movements.
Are you aware that many of you have the missing pieces to this massive endeavor that could end tyranny on a galactic scale, but you refuse to find out what they are? Because you've chosen to think you already know everything, and what you don't know, you just chalk it up to being mystical when it's not. Or you're just cognitively lazy and prefer to be spoon-fed whatever makes you feel good, whether it is truth or deception. So long as you're in with the crowd, all feeling good about yourselves, you assume you'll be okay. Well, I wouldn't bank on following the herd if you're even remotely smart enough to see where they're all headed. Now, Jonathan walked away, and you can try to work this out on your own, which is entirely possible, or you can learn with those few who are taking that responsibility and forget the many who just want a get out of jail free pass of entitlement and get sucked into that deadly consciousness. Even though I made the futile attempt to describe what I could actually see intellectually in what Jonathan shared as scalar reality and this cancer consciousness. But I always told you to go directly to his videos and gain from them and learn what part you were to play in all of this. No different than me suggesting you go directly to the Beals channel and learn what you can from their experience. Most everyone fell in love with Jonathan because he was in medicine, his voice was sexy and strong, and he made use of words that everyone already felt comfortable with in reference to God, love, Jesus, Satan, or the Christ, etc. Even though he stressed over and over again that none of those names would even begin to help people know what he knew, but rather that they were all consciousness, which most could not wrap their minds around. Even Satan was a disconnected and tyrannical consciousness, and love was nothing like we've been told, but that it was the intent to create, or an intelligence that Jonathan couldn't describe, but that these names were all people could grasp, so he used them.
Lilith, right? All the different names for the serpent. Fine, let's call it Lilith. If you want to call it Satan, Semiramis, whatever, Isis, the serpent, it doesn't matter. And it recruits them and tells them how much it loves them. Do you understand that evil is going to come in the name of love? You think it's stupid? It's going to come in the name of hate? No. The number one thing that evil will push on you is love and how much it loves you. Comedy is the number one vector for mind control because it puts you in a pleasurable state and you're focused on the joke, and therefore they can slip in so many messages and you'll associate their messages with pleasure.
Jonathan said comedy and porn were the two mind control vectors, and explained exactly how subliminal mind control would create the feeling of pleasure even when there were no human connections involved, and that this cancer consciousness would come in the name of love via emotional attachments, and he explained that in great detail. But who ever really heard that? The only difference in what Jonathan broke down as vectors for spreading this cancerous consciousness and what the Beals have recognized as the main virus vector is that the end result is the same, and it's all about that feel-good pleasure, mistakenly called love, based on programming. I often wonder if Jonathan may have compromised his message too much in order to appease people in their overly sensitive positions, and in doing so, he wasn't able to penetrate that hypnotic or insane response he got from so many people. I know he took a lot of shit online for what he shared and got very little traction, prior to his disappearance, regardless of how incredible his experiences and his message were. Some even rejected Jonathan because his message was very in your face, which they defined as arrogant, of course, and egotistical, which is exactly what people have been programmed unconsciously to do. And his frustration with people not being able to feel truth when they heard it was just as harshly expressed by him as it is by the Beals. Now, Jonathan often called his listeners insane and unable to reconnect with spirit due to their refusal to disassemble the ego and their faulty belief systems. Not much difference, really. So, nothing's changed. It's really still all about the messenger than the actual message, which is exactly what you've been programmed to focus on. Who, not what. If you're focused on who, those who don't want you to find the truth know you'll never hear the what. So you'll never recognize truth when you see it or hear it, and especially won't recognize all the lies either, because you've been blinded by ego to focus on the who and never to hear the what they are actually saying. So when these fake teachers get all physically in shape and get you focused on your body rather than your awareness, you foolishly believe they must be doing something right. Therefore, you mimic them and cling to whatever they tell you. If you get downright honest about it, you'll admit the truth in that statement. And all that does is cheat you out of an authentic experience of your own, exactly as it was meant to. It's like this. Take a listen.
When you connect to the creative spirit, now, it's so difficult to be precise on this because I don't want people seeking something outside of themselves. The way the creative spirit will interface with you will be with your spirit, which is it, a derivative of it. And then it will rise from within to command your mind. It will never speak directly to your ego. And people say, well, yeah, but the way you talk about it, it's like a conversation. No, that's my translation for you of understanding. It is my spirit that is teaching me. Do you understand that? And it gets the influence from something larger. I'm learning from me. When I try to translate it for you, Jonathan, do this, Jonathan, this is how it is. That is a translation into words for what is occurring inside of me. It's the best way I can put it.
I always said that anything I shared was subject to change as new information was received. And please understand, Jonathan used the term God because it was the only way he could relate to those who knew nothing of the creative force of consciousness, but only knew religious terms. Here are a few brief excerpts from one of Jonathan's best videos, just to demonstrate that he too experienced extreme frustration, which is why he gave up teaching online.
What is their primary agenda? They absolutely require you to feel responsible for whatever they have done to you. They need you to be ignorant of the extra-dimensional influence, because if you're ignorant of that, you will blame everything on yourself. That's how it works. What a scam this is. Create the soul, right? Put you in there. Put you in an energy body and put you in a body. And of course, you will have absolute amnesia the moment you're born. And you're like a programmed character in a Sims game. And you develop your character with each new day. And they control the character. What they do is make you default the best they can. Make you defy what you normally would do. And the energy body, which is where your mind is, you see, your mind isn't in your brain. Your brain's a conjugate to your mind. It is just a receiver to it. It is larger than your brain accesses. Imagine if you have 500 points of consciousness in your mind, and your brain is tuned to access 240 or something like that. Then it's a filter. Do you understand that? It's a filter. It's blinders. And so when you die, they come to you and create an illusion, a reality as real as the one you experience right now, and try to slam you quick. They'll come to you in whatever way they need to, based upon assessment of your mind. Your mind will be like a hard drive on a computer. They can access all of it right away, instantaneously, and will create the suitable illusion and excuse for your experience. Either you're learning a lesson and your soul is evolving, so you need to do it again, reincarnate again to grow. Bullshit. Or you have sinned and I'm judging you and I am Jesus, and you can either go to hell or you can reincarnate and learn your lesson. Bullshit. Or they'll just try to send you directly to a hell-like experience and allow them, law of contract, to torture you because you feel you were judged by God. They do all the shit through you, pervert you, corrupt you, your character, basically, get all the other characters to hate you if possible, and then use what they've done to and through you against you. And with each new life, they break your will until eventually you just give yourself to this cancer consciousness so it can absorb you for itself. Why does it work? Why does it work for these secret societies? Satan, if you want to call it that, isn't stupid. Remember the discussion of scalar reality from The Healing Begins Now. Very important now for you to understand that. Satan is like a consciousness that is separate, which is like cancer. Therefore, it has scalar growth, and it will see itself as one thing. So, when it seduces and entices and recruits, its reasoning will be very, very close to the reasoning that Christ would have, or the Spirit's reasoning, because it will make a lot of sense. It will mirror a lot of the laws of creation. Yet, it will have the cancer agenda, right? That's what it does.
So, how much of that did any of you actually catch prior to hearing my edited version to bring out the most important statements? Breaking that hypnotic spell, it's not easy. In fact, it's quite terrifying at first, until you see it for yourself and what it is in all its grand illusions. But this hypnosis is real, and like a deep sleep, it prevents people from ever even seeking outside of another false perception or dream world presented to them as an alternative to keep them in the same or similar state of hypnosis, believing they are awake when they're not. We've all been subjected to multiple programs, creating a false sense of self, a false sense of reality, and a false sense of knowing. All just concepts, ideas, limited faulty awareness imposed upon us from those responsible for the tyranny. Now, can I see everything Jonathan tried so hard to show people in regards to neuro-linguistic programming, subliminal mind programming through media, movies, and propaganda? No, not always. Jonathan had a very serious warning for those who could not. Take a listen.
I don't know what is going on, how people could be in this much of a trance, but this is your world. I don't know. Do you want to wake up or not? It's right there. I'm not projecting that onto that picture. If you can't see that, God help you.
Now, I bet most of you never even heard that clip. I am also unable to sense everything the Bills share of their own personal experiences, which are so numerous it boggles the mind. And they too warn us that the windows of opportunity to see and know actual reality and reconnecting to your spirit are closing fast. I have now had 3 very amazing and miraculous jumps into the abyss, if you will, of a greater cosmic experience, and none of them have been mystical in any way. Nothing short of fucking mind-blowing either. But these experiences, they're real. They're not mystical. So I can truly say I'm no longer speaking from intellect, but actual experience. So, if you're experiencing anything mystical or lacking actual humanness, you're not doing the real work and you're not experiencing the real deal. You're just playing with the old hive indoctrination, and it's a very dangerous place to hang your hat long term, but that's your choice. No one ever said that this would be an easy choice. Simple? Yes. Easy? Not even close. This is a very difficult journey, and it has its ups and downs, but not like the one shared by all the fakes out there. Not at all. And I'm going to share with you a bit of both so you can know the difference. Blaming fucking planetary retrogrades or family misunderstandings or society or anything besides their own faulty bullshit and lack of responsibility versus the real ups and downs of the true work. The ups are the mind-blowing experience of an entire cosmic relationship, and they can only be shared with those who've had the actual experience. The downs are nothing about earthly mishaps or not getting your way and how it's always everyone else's fault. Here's an example of an authentic down moment. This last week or so, I've not been able to penetrate the cosmic communication that I was having just about every day after my initial experience, and it completely befuddled me as to why not. I finally figured it out, and hopefully, this will assist you in a deep knowing of how things actually work. In truth, my current frustration was not the same frustration Jonathan shared or what the Beals are experiencing, but I was able to nail it down, and I'm thinking this may help some of you understand what I mean by actual experience versus intellectual belief systems that have no basis in real truth. As some of you know, about a year and a half ago, I began making videos to describe what I intellectually knew was a truth. There was a deep internal push to expose the charlatans, the con men, and women out there pushing a load of BS in order to gain some personal recognition and stroke their egos while cheating people out of their hard-earned money. I hadn't yet experienced anything off-world or cosmic in nature at that time, and I had zero hive experiences to pull from. And with close to 10 years of religious study, extensive training in sales and marketing, nearly 30 years of conspiracy theories, then 5 years of Gnostic and mystical research, it was becoming blatantly obvious that something was totally amiss, in that nothing ever manifested in the way of actual experience and connection to spirit from all that investment of time and energy, regardless of all that I did know. I also know that I had a personal responsibility to expose the not so obvious fraudulent teachings that I knew were total BS, and that there was a job to do of exposing it all for what it really was. And these folks hate it when someone who's had the same or better training and far more experience and study than they have turn the table on them and expose their craft and plagiarisms. I could easily see when these tactics were, and still are, being used on innocent people by supposedly ex-religious ministers with a cheap car sales and multi-level marketing training, trying to push an unindoctrination via plagiarizing everything and selling their wares to the gullible on YouTube. That much I knew, and it was easy to show the incredible deception taking place on that level. But at the level of the cosmos, or direct connection to spirit, I was still green, and no one in all my research ever made sense about any of it until I found Jonathan, and then years later, the Beals. And after 54 years of personal experience, I still had no actual experience of riding the bike, as Jonathan spoke of, or dealing with the realities of energetic influence as the Beals share. I decided to stop that fruitless endeavor of explaining what I intellectually knew, and told you that I wouldn't be back until I had an actual experience to speak of. I was primed and ready for what was to transpire very shortly after that. I explain that experience in great detail in other videos if you haven't seen them. Anyway, back to my most recent experience to give you something to compare to. I was able to nail down my current frustration, and I hope this helps you to finally make that decision to gain actual experience yourself, rather than suffering needlessly based on false interpretations of what those who don't want you to ride a bike are teaching you. When I first read Demystifying the Mystical by Endel Beal, he mentioned a book titled The Book of Not Knowing by Peter Ralston. Incredible coincidences began to happen every day after reading Demystifying the Mystical and Willful Evolution. Interestingly, I actually had the Book of Not Knowing by Ralston for nearly 7 years, and I never read it. For 2 reasons. One, it was huge, actually 580 pages, I think, about consciousness, and it was way over my head at that time. But I always held on to it because, for some reason, I knew that at some point I'd be ready for it. And 2, the freaking title always bugged me. I mean, the Book of Not Knowing? Really? When all we're ever told is that not knowing means you're stupid or ignorant? Who didn't want to know everything, right? I even joked with Endel about this early on and explained the reasons for never reading that book. And if I remember correctly, he stated something like, maybe now is a good time? Well, I confess that with all Endel's books and reference materials to add to my already overstuffed mind, I still had not picked it up until this current frustration just got the best of me, and I felt that internal nudge to get it out and begin, which was just this week. In the very first chapter, I totally figured out my frustration and what had happened over the last few days and why I was feeling so disoriented. In that first chapter, Ralston explains the problem with all belief systems and that actually not knowing is the door to real knowing through real experience. And I totally knew exactly what he meant. And just like I explained in my Let Go of My Ego video, where I shared the actual experience I had that changed everything, it's this exact moment that I feel needs to be expanded on for clarity. You see, it was in the very moment of a monumental challenge that I dropped all knowing of what might happen as a result of the risk I was about to take. It was then that a super deep intuitive knowing presented itself to me. If I had allowed even one of those ego statements of false beliefs to interfere in that very moment of time, I would have never gained that experience. The ego voice would have drowned out the intuitive voice of creation, showing me there was nothing to fear, and exposed to me the greatest enemy of mankind, the very virus habits that we are all subject to. Lately, I've been trying to keep up on current events and realized that once again, as Ralston so clearly pointed out in the first chapter of his book, how easy it is to fall right back into a place of knowing versus not knowing, and presumption and conclusions based on a false reality, and that I had lost that place of usefulness of being empty of all beliefs, that place of being truly open to actual experience by not knowing. And when you feel this loss of empty space within that openness, it's very disturbing, and therein lied my internal frustration. My cup was full again from all those years of study, and there was no room left for anything more, which is what I've been experiencing the past few days, trying to keep up on current events and all my years of false perceptions of a false reality bleeding through my actual experience and overriding what I could be experiencing. Whether or not you feel I'm once again promoting a book, an author, a teacher, or whatever, I'm simply sharing with you those that I have found who've been able to experience actual knowing from a very grounded openness, meaning they've not lost the fact that we are human in this experience, and the only way to get there is to remove all previously held beliefs, courageously remain open to all possibilities, and allow whatever to reveal itself to you in that split second.
You must dismantle your belief systems or be as a child, meaning pre-programming, pre-indoctrination. You have to be honest with yourself about this world. This is a world of both true creation and miscreation, both created by a mind. The mind will create whether it is or is not guided by spirit and or cancer. Cancer is an insane creation, meaning a mind without the guidance of the whole. Your own insanity is the mind, which has been isolated in and of itself, which was never the design in creation. Now, the book that's meant to deceive you doesn't tell you that. Well, it does in some ways, but those parables are old, and people don't understand them correctly. The only way you can understand the parables given by whoever that man was is to learn them via your spirit in congruence with the spirit. Gain the knowledge so that you can look at the book and see what is true. Meaning, put the book down. It's not going anywhere. Put it down. Anybody can know this. You just have to drop your fear and ask for it. Intend for it. And you have to let go of whatever you think you believe in order to know the truth. If you're not willing to do that, then you can't know spirit. Because this is an insane world of miscreation and creation. It makes no sense.
Not knowing is risky, which is why it's avoided by most people. It offers up only a moment of all possible experience, and it has to be trusted, and most people fear the outcome, so they never go to that place and jump into it for all that it might offer. Instead, they remain steadfast in refusing to do the work and writing those who have, and claim it as their own. which is total self-deception and always results in the deception of others. Exactly what the ego virus was meant to create, self-delusions of grandeur so no one would ever discover who they really are. You could say, coming from a place of not knowing and deeply invested in actual experience from inner wisdom is the prerequisite to actual knowing. So, the minute you think you know anything is the very moment of deep inquiry to what you think you know, and then allow an actual experience of reality to present itself to you. I have no other way to explain this. It must be experienced. And therein lies the other extreme frustration for those who truly want to help people gain actual experience and yet constantly deal with those who refuse to do it from a place of not knowing and prefer to remain in the all-knowing ego world of illusions and false perceptions of reality and deceptive practices that were designed to keep you from knowing what you were born to be. Only the ego has an image to present to the world of already knowing everything. And that's why those who come from a place of not knowing into true knowing can say things like, if your cup is already full, there's no room for anything else, and the cup becomes useless to hold anything but what's already in it. That's a paraphrase, of course, but we've all heard it, and yet many don't grasp the true meaning. Dump the cup of all its preconceived ideas, concepts, belief systems, and faulty instructions, and become open to what is real. That's been the same message repeated over and over again, time and time again, all throughout history by those who knew. In other words, make the cup useful again. A cup is only useful when it's empty. Now that may seem obvious, but take a moment to think about this deeply. That's where the real work is, in keeping the cup useful rather than full of mystical nonsense and limited egotistical awareness of nothing but itself, in a world filled with so much more than that. It's far too easy to fall right back into an already filled cup. And once you have the actual experience of an empty cup, of not knowing, and you're open to the creative spirit to take you wherever you need to go, if you fill it back up on any subject, you'll also experience a deep loss of connection. And that's what I experienced this week when I attempted to fill the vessel with what I thought I knew about the current state of affairs in this world reality. Once again, the work is to empty the cup and inquire from a place of not knowing to one of expansion. From my experience, there's no other way. All my connections were restored once this lesson was learned. The ups and downs of this experience are nothing like those who are only deceiving themselves and everyone who follows them, making every excuse possible to gain your sympathy and what's left in your wallet, or claiming the ego has got to go while using their own overinflated ego to explain it. It would be humorous if it wasn't so damn obviously ridiculous and tyrannical. It's way past time to grow up and take responsibility to awaken yourself from this hypnosis and find your place and connection to what you really are. We all have an individual responsibility to reconnect with our infinite conscious awareness. And you may even have an important piece of the puzzle for ground crew here, but we'll never know unless you begin to not know so that you can actually know what we all need to know. Got that? So, from all I shared here, you can see that I was being primed all along intellectually, especially by Jonathan, just in time for the bills to push me out of intellect and into experience. But here's a fair warning, and a very serious one to consider. If you're thinking you're ready for the bills work, you'd better be extremely thick-skinned and an empty cup. Otherwise, you won't last more than a few days over there. And if you think I'm kidding, there's only one way to find out. Yep, experience. And for those interested in all the excerpts of Jonathan's video that I decided not to use within my script, please continue listening because I left them here as they're more important now than 10 years ago. Take care.
Of the all-seeing eye, or the hive mind. Satan can speak through anybody at any time that it's connected to. So can the spirit, which is the conflict. Like a bunch of computers that are all linked together for super processing, Satan's Intellectual strength grows with each new soul that it absorbs. You know, it's a growth. Do you understand that? It's growing like a cancer. It's a program. How many people do you know take credit for things that they didn't do? People that plagiarize do it all of the time. They don't give credit to whoever they learned it from. They just say it like it's their own idea. Basically, Satan plagiarizes the Spirit to recruit, to entice, to seduce. It plagiarizes the Spirit. The problem is you shouldn't need to be told that. You should be able to see that. They just absorb the love, which is what a lot of spiritual, quote, gurus do. They absorb your energy through admiration. That's what they're doing. So the best advice I can give to you is overcome your reality. That doesn't mean numb yourself to this world. It doesn't mean don't appreciate it. Satan controls all of academia, all of the media, all of the money, everything you're told. And a total defense against that is getting you to hate Satan. Satan loves that. Why would Satan love that? Because you're giving it energy, and hate is not of your true nature. Therefore, if it gets you doing that, then you give it energy, which means you're going to have to dismantle the ego somewhat. Not the mind, just the ego. Meaning, what's the proof that a mind is useful here? Well, to make the decisions, to navigate through the illusion. The fears of the mind, but spirit overrides that. If you go into your backyard and walk up to a little bird's nest and say that bird has little babies in it, you being 80 times the size of the bird, try it. Try it. Walk up to the bird's nest. That little bird, 1/80th of your size, will stand up to you. Home of the brave, it'll stand up to you. And more times than not, the human will run, cover their head, and be freaked out. Look how freaked out people get by a little bee. Because, see, to protect the babies, it has a natural understanding of the intrinsic value of their lives and its life. But if there were no babies in that nest, the bird would fly. It would flee, proving it was able to make a mental decision. So Satan will try to get you to abandon the mind altogether. Why? Because there is truth in the fraudulent nature of your ego. So it knows that truth will come out, so it has to amplify that and exaggerate it beyond usefulness. Get rid of the whole mind. Become a robot. Or I love this one, the spirituality of love in the form of dissociation, bliss. Don't talk to me so firmly, you're putting me on a negative vibration. What? What if you had a kid that was walking towards a busy street? Didn't know what they were doing. They were walking towards that street and the cars were unaware of the kid. Oh dear, I don't want to put you in a negative vibration. I want to be all of love, but I really need you. Bang! No, the moment you see that, your intuition will make you yell. Hey! You'll scare that kid probably in the moment. But that's better than the kid dying. Negative vibration. Satan coordinates this bullshit New Age movement to get people to dissociate. It's no different than getting drunk. It's detachment from your normal instinct to try to help everybody in this realm. You become concerned with your own bliss. Therefore, you don't speak out against it unless you're speaking out to get other people to detach. Now, you do need to detach from this reality, but while in it, it would help if you try to see your detachment as you walk in the woods and think that you've accomplished something and you think your whole world is of your negative ego. That isn't stopping a little child from being raped today. Your detachment. Anyway, the second thing that's been on my mind, it could very well be that Christianity and a lot of these religions were designed, their very purpose, thinking this many moves ahead, designed to fail. How? Why? Well, if they steal the teachings of Christ and then create this Jesus deity, this Trinity, which isn't what it was, then point their fingers at themselves like they always do, expose the Babylonian symbolism, the satanic symbolism of the religions they created. They could do that in hopes to make you abandon all Christ's teachings as well, do you see? If you don't know that they stole those teachings, then you'll think that they created those teachings. They expose the deity as symbolism, and then everybody will have their big sigh of relief. Oh, we don't have to be good. We don't have to follow any of that. You see, the ultimate last-ditch attempt to discredit Christ. Why? That opens the door for the New World religion of sorcery, or Satanism, for the utopia. It has to be that, because there's no way these people doing what they're doing could have given the metaphors that Christ gave to create some symbolic deity. Just the two wouldn't go hand in hand. So, it really, from what I've been learning, what I've seen, they stole his teachings to draw people into both Christianity and Satanism. Then they're going to point the finger at the symbolism of Christianity and other religions, so that people release all of the teachings of Christ, thinking it was a fraud, for the final entrapment. It's very important that you stay balanced, because regardless of what's happening in this reality, you have got to stay you while you speak out about it. All of these things. The primary foundation of what you are is love, and that's what they don't want you to know. And the easiest way to do that is to come in the name of love and slowly tear you away from it, redefine it, to ensnare you in the web.